What's up, what's up? Welcome back to SwitchTop. Today I'm bringing you 20 hidden gems on the Nintendo Switch that absolutely deserve your attention. So if you're tired of scrolling through the eShop wondering what to play next, stick around because I guarantee at least one of these games is going to blow your mind. Let's jump right in. Thronefall takes the tower defense genre and strips it down to its absolute core in the best way possible. During the day, you're building up your kingdom, placing defensive structures, upgrading your castle, and positioning archers and barracks across your tiny little realm. Then, night falls, and waves of enemies come crashing in, and you're right there in the action with a sword in hand, fighting alongside your troops. It's this perfect blend of strategy and hack-and-slash action that keeps you engaged every single second. Each level introduces new threats and unlocks different building options, so you're constantly adapting your strategy. The minimalist art style is gorgeous, and the progression system hooks you immediately because every decision matters when you're working with limited resources. Runs are quick, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, which makes it dangerously addictive for one more game sessions. What really makes it shine is how it respects your time while still offering genuine strategic depth.
Random waves of enemies that you can play hours on end. In short, Thronefall is an intentionally reduced version of a classical strategy game. It is very much designed to scratch that same itch, but in a more lean...
Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. This is Ubisoft doing what they do best, but in a smaller, more focused package. The Lost Crown is a metroidvania that puts you in control of Sargon, a member of an elite warrior group called the Immortals, as you explore a cursed palace frozen in time. The combat is incredibly tight and responsive, with a perfect parry system that feels amazing when you nail it, and you're juggling multiple abilities and powers as you progress. The time manipulation mechanics aren't just gimmicks, you're using them to solve environmental puzzles, freeze enemies mid-attack, and navigate through impossible platforming sections. The palace itself is massive and interconnected in really clever ways, with tons of secrets tucked into every corner. Boss fights are genuinely challenging without feeling unfair, and the difficulty options let you tailor the experience. The story touches on betrayal and redemption without getting too heavy-handed about it, and the Persian mythology inspiration gives everything a unique flavor. Wargroove 2. If you've ever loved Advance Wars, Wargroove 2 is basically that, but with a fantasy coat of paint and some modern quality of life improvements. You're commanding armies across grid-based battlefields, managing different unit types from swordsmen and archers to mages and giant golems. And each commander has unique abilities that can completely change how you approach battles. The campaign follows multiple storylines across different factions, so you're constantly seeing things from new perspectives and getting attached to different characters. What sets it apart is the groove system, where your commander charges up a special ability that can turn the tide of battle if used at the right moment. The difficulty curve is well balanced, teaching you new mechanics gradually while still providing challenge for strategy veterans. There's also a robust map editor and sharing system if you want to create your own campaigns or try community-made content, which adds basically unlimited replay value to an already meaty package. Cyber Shadow. This is pure old-school action platforming, but with modern polish that makes it feel incredible. You play as Shadow, a cyber ninja waking up in a ruined world overrun by machines, and you're trying to piece together what happened while slicing through hordes of robots. The gameplay is brutally challenging in that classic NES Ninja Gaiden style, where every screen is a test of your reflexes and pattern recognition. But the checkpoints are generous enough that it never feels unfair. As you progress, you unlock new abilities like a downward strike, shuriken throws, and a grappling hook that fundamentally change how you approach both combat and traversal. The level design is masterful, constantly introducing new enemy types and environmental hazards that force you to adapt. And the boss battles are these massive, screen-filling spectacles. The story unfolds through brief cutscenes and environmental storytelling, giving you just enough context without interrupting the action. And the synth-heavy soundtrack absolutely slaps with that retro-futuristic vibe. Tunic is one of those games that feels like discovering a secret your older sibling wouldn't tell you about. You're a little fox adventuring through a mysterious world filled with ruins, monsters, and secrets, and the game deliberately doesn't explain anything to you. What makes it special is how you find pages of an in-game instruction manual scattered throughout the world, and these pages are written in a made-up language, but the diagrams and images give you clues about hidden mechanics and secrets. The combat is Souls-like, with stamina management, dodge rolls, and deliberate attack patterns, but it's more accessible than most games in that genre. The world is interconnected in really clever ways where you're constantly looping back and finding shortcuts. And the puzzles range from environmental challenges to cryptic riddles that require serious detective work. There's this constant sense of discovery where you're always finding something new, whether it's a hidden path, a secret boss, or a game-changing item. Nobody saves the world. This game takes the action RPG formula and completely flips it by letting you transform into different forms, each with unique abilities and playstyles. You start as Nobody, this featureless, blank slate character, and you find a magic wand that lets you shapeshift into forms like a rat, ranger, knight, magician, and eventually more wild stuff like a dragon or mech. Each form has its own skill tree and abilities, and the genius is that you can mix and match abilities between forms to create completely broken combos. The combat is fast and satisfying. The dungeons are randomly generated so each run feels different, and there are constantly new quests pushing you to try different forms and experiment with abilities you might not normally use. The world is interconnected with different biomes, each with unique enemy types and challenges, and the progression system is incredibly addictive because you're always unlocking something new. Pepper Grinder is all about movement and momentum, and once it clicks, you feel like a speedrunning god. You play as Pepper, searching for your stolen treasure, and your main tool is a massive drill that you use to burrow through the ground like you're swimming through soil. The levels are designed around this drilling mechanic, where you're chaining together underground sections with above-ground platforming, launching yourself out of the ground to reach distant platforms, and using the drill to defeat enemies and solve environmental puzzles. It's incredibly fast-paced with a focus on maintaining your momentum, and when you nail a sequence perfectly, it feels absolutely amazing. The game constantly introduces new mechanics like grappling points, underwater sections, and different enemy types that force you to think on your feet. Boss fights are these intense gauntlets where you're using every skill you've learned, and the time attack nature of the game encourages you to replay levels to find faster routes and optimize your movement. Retro Revengers. This is a love letter to classic beat-em-ups, but with a time loop twist that makes it way more interesting than it has any right to be. You and your friends are trying to save the world from an alien invasion, but you keep dying and looping back to the start, and each loop you retain some progress and learn more about what's coming. The combat is your standard side-scrolling brawler action, with punches, kicks, and special moves, but the time loop structure means you're constantly making decisions about which routes to take and which objectives to prioritize, because you can't do everything in one run. There are multiple characters to unlock, each with different movesets and abilities, and the story branches based on your choices and which loops you complete. The pixel art style is vibrant and detailed, and there's this great sense of humor throughout with tons of 80s and 90s pop culture references that never feel forced. Eight-Bit Adventures 2. If you miss classic JRPGs from the SNES era, this is exactly what you're craving, but without any of the outdated frustrations. You're following a group of heroes trying to stop an apocalyptic threat, and the turn-based combat system is incredibly well designed, with a focus on timing-based attacks and defenses that keep you engaged during every battle. Each character has unique abilities and skill trees, and the party dynamics actually matter, both in combat and in the story. The narrative deals with some surprisingly heavy themes about fate, choice, and consequences, but it never forgets to have fun with quirky characters and genuinely funny dialogue. Dungeons are filled with puzzles that actually make you think without being frustrating, and the boss battles require legitimate strategy rather than just grinding levels. There are tons of side quests and secrets to discover, and the game respects your time with quality of life features like adjustable encounter rates and fast travel. Dredge is a fishing game where something is very, very wrong, and that contrast is what makes it so compelling. You're a fisherman who arrives in a remote archipelago, and during the day, you're sailing between islands, casting your line, catching fish, upgrading your boat, and selling your haul to the locals. Then night falls, and everything changes. The fog rolls in, strange things start appearing in the water, your sanity meter begins to drain, and you realize this isn't just about fishing anymore. The core gameplay loop of exploring, fishing, and upgrading is incredibly satisfying, with tons of different fish species to catch and a Tetris-style inventory system for managing your cargo. Each island has its own ecosystem and secrets to discover, and the locals all have requests that gradually reveal the dark history of the region. The cosmic horror elements are perfectly balanced, never overwhelming the core fishing gameplay, but always lurking just beneath the surface. Shogun Showdown is a turn-based roguelike that plays out on a single lane, and it's way more intense than that sounds. You're a Ronin seeking revenge, and combat happens on a grid where you can see exactly what your enemies are going to do next turn. So every move becomes this calculated puzzle. You're managing a deck of attack tiles that you place in a queue, chaining together combos while positioning yourself to avoid enemy attacks. And the tension comes from planning several moves ahead while adapting to what the enemies throw at you. Between runs, you're unlocking new characters, abilities, and items that completely change your approach. And the game constantly introduces new enemy types that force you to rethink your strategies. The pixel art has this clean, stylish look that makes everything easy to read, even when things get chaotic. Runs are quick enough that you can squeeze one in during a break, but the depth keeps you coming back because there's always a new combination to try, or a challenge to overcome. Bow, Path of the Teal Lotus. This is a hand-drawn metroidvania set in Japanese folklore, and the art style alone is worth the price of admission. You play as Bow, a celestial fox on a journey to restore balance, and the movement feels absolutely incredible, with fluid animations and tight controls that make platforming a joy. The combat centers around a staff that you're constantly upgrading with new abilities, letting you launch enemies, perform aerial combos, and eventually unlock special moves tied to different Japanese mythology elements. The world is beautifully interconnected, with diverse biomes ranging from serene bamboo forests to dark, corrupted temples, and each area introduces unique enemy types inspired by yokai and other folklore creatures. Exploration is rewarded with hidden shrines, secret abilities, and collectibles that flesh out the lore without dumping exposition on you. Boss fights are these gorgeous spectacles that test everything you've learned while telling their own mini-stories through their attack patterns and design. Sentinels, Aegis Rim. This is one of the most ambitious narrative experiences on Switch, blending visual novel storytelling with real-time strategy combat. You're following 13 different protagonists across multiple time periods, and each character has their own story that slowly weaves together into this massive sci-fi mystery involving mechs, time travel, and an apocalyptic threat. The adventure sections play like a side-scrolling visual novel where you're exploring environments, talking to characters, and making choices that affect how the story unfolds. And the game deliberately keeps you confused at first, because unraveling the mystery is half the experience. Then you've got the combat sections, where you're commanding giant mechs in tower defense-style battles, managing multiple units with different abilities while waves of kaiju-like enemies assault your position. The way the game parcels out story beats is brilliant, always giving you just enough information to keep you hooked while raising new questions.
Enemy on the move. That ought to be you.
This is all pretty freaky.
Okay, what's the plan? As long as I can keep this thing moving.
Number 21 on
What's
the
our
move.
plan? Still not.
Inkulinati is a turn-based strategy game that takes place inside medieval manuscripts, and the concept is as creative as it sounds. You're an Inkulinati master, drawing creatures and units directly onto the pages of a living book, battling against other masters in these absurd tactical showdowns. Each unit you draw costs ink, and you're managing your resources while positioning your army, using special abilities, and trying to push your opponent's units off the page or into hazards. The medieval humor is everywhere, with flatulent donkeys, sword-wielding rabbits, and other ridiculous creatures all pulled from actual medieval manuscript art. The strategy has serious depth, with positioning, unit synergies, and the ability to draw environmental hazards or even interact with the page itself by smudging units or changing the terrain. Single player features a campaign mode where you're traveling across a map, unlocking new units and abilities while facing increasingly challenging opponents. Ender Magnolia, Bloom in the Mist. This is the follow-up to Ender Lilies, but stands completely on its own, and it's a hauntingly beautiful metroidvania set in a world devastated by an alchemical disaster. You play as Lilac, an artificial homunculus trying to understand your purpose while exploring a land filled with corrupted creatures and tragic stories. Combat revolves around summoning spirits of fallen warriors to fight alongside you, and each spirit has unique attack patterns and abilities that you're constantly mixing and matching to handle different situations. The world design is incredible, with this melancholic atmosphere where beauty and decay exist side by side, and every area tells a story through environmental details and item descriptions. Boss battles are these emotional encounters where you're fighting corrupted beings and then purifying them, learning their backstories, and adding them to your arsenal of spirits. Iron Meat. If you've been craving a modern take on classic run-and-gun shooters like Contra, Iron Meat delivers that adrenaline rush in the best way possible. You're fighting through a grotesque alien invasion with body horror visuals that would make Cronenberg proud, and the action is relentless from start to finish. The gameplay is pure arcade intensity, where you're running, jumping, and shooting through 8 levels of absolute chaos, with weapon pickups that dramatically change your firepower, from spread shots to lasers to homing missiles. Each level introduces new environmental hazards and enemy types that keep you on your toes, and the screen is constantly filled with projectiles, explosions, and grotesque alien creatures that you're weaving through. Boss fights are these massive, multi-phase encounters where you're learning patterns and exploiting weak points while the entire screen becomes a bullet hell. Neon Inferno delivers a fast-paced 2D action experience that blends classic run-and-gun gameplay with a unique dual-layer shooting system, letting you attack enemies in both the foreground and background at the same time. You play as a skilled assassin, moving through intense mission-based stages set in a gritty, cyberpunk version of New York, where crime factions fight for control of the city. The combat focuses heavily on precision, positioning, and reflexes, with mechanics like bullet deflection, melee attacks, and multiple weapon options that keep encounters dynamic instead of repetitive. Each level is designed with an arcade-style structure, encouraging mastery through replay rather than long progression systems. The gameplay loop revolves around clearing enemy waves, adapting to hazards, and refining your performance as patterns become more demanding. Combined with its detailed pixel art, neon-drenched atmosphere, and skill-driven challenge, the game stands out as a hidden gem for players who enjoy tight, gameplay-first action with strong arcade energy and stylish presentation. Bollock's Pit is a creative roguelite that mixes brick-breaker physics with action combat and long-term progression, creating a gameplay loop that feels simple at first, but surprisingly deep over time. Instead of traditional weapons, you launch ricocheting balls that bounce across the arena, dealing damage through smart angles, positioning, and chaining hits across enemy waves and bosses. Each run takes you deeper into a monster-filled pit beneath the ruined city of Balbalon, where you collect resources, unlock upgrades, and experiment with different ball fusions that dramatically change your build and strategy. The fusion system encourages constant experimentation, while multiple heroes with unique traits add variety to how each run plays. Between runs, you rebuild and expand your base to unlock permanent bonuses and new options, giving the game a strong sense of progression without losing its arcade-style intensity. The Rogue Prince of Persia is a fast-paced, 2D roguelite action platformer that focuses heavily on fluid movement, responsive combat, and skill-driven progression. You control the prince as he navigates procedurally generated areas using parkour abilities like wall running, vaulting, and acrobatic jumps that seamlessly blend into combat encounters. The gameplay loop revolves around exploring branching paths, fighting enemies, collecting weapons, medallions, and upgrades, then returning stronger after each run thanks to permanent progression systems. Combat combines melee strikes, mobility, and strategic positioning, rewarding precision and mastery rather than button mashing. The story follows the prince trapped in a time loop after his own actions lead to a devastating invasion, forcing him to repeatedly battle through a changing city to fix his mistakes. Narrative elements unfold naturally through exploration, NPC encounters, and gradual progression, maintaining strong pacing. Absolum is a side-scrolling action brawler that blends classic beat-em-up combat with roguelike progression, creating a gameplay loop focused on mastery, build variety, and replayability. You choose from multiple distinct characters, each with unique weapons, abilities, and playstyles, then fight through enemy-filled stages using light and heavy attacks, dodges, grabs, and powerful arcana skills fueled by mana. Combat feels deliberate and combo-driven, rewarding timing, positioning, and smart use of counters rather than simple button mashing. During runs, you collect rituals that grant elemental buffs and passive upgrades, allowing you to shape different builds every attempt. If you fall in battle, you return to a hub sanctuary, where permanent upgrades and new options gradually strengthen future runs. Set in a dark fantasy world oppressed by a tyrannical ruler who has outlawed magic, the story unfolds naturally through encounters and exploration. And that wraps up another 20 hidden gems that deserve way more love than they're getting. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more hidden gem recommendations, and I'll see you in the next video. Now get out there and play some amazing games.